We're going to talk about two topics. One is the qualitative research, and then it's going to lead into our next topic, which is need finding. So there's qualitative and quantitative research. And qualitative is more subjective, and quantitative is more numbers. I'll give you examples. So qualitative is more observation, interviewing, focus groups. You're having discussion with people and you're analyzing how that's going, or you're observing something, and we'll give more examples and talk about that today. Quantitative is a little different. We're going to learn more about that later in the semester, and that's more survey data, laboratory experiments, and we'll focus on examples later, but that's more objective. And the purpose of need finding is really going to be more qualitative analysis, and so that's why we're going to talk about that today. So here, the first method we'll talk about is observation. Now, when you're observing people to see how they're using something, maybe they're using a tool that you're going to improve upon, and you want to see how they're doing it. So you're observing them and you're taking notes, and you're kind of trying to not be noticed. You don't want them to see you. You want to really be in the environment that you're observing. So fly on the wall is the technique where it's called that because it's exactly what you think. Sometimes you say, I want to be a fly on that wall. So that's kind of what your goal is, to be a fly on the wall, to observe. But you're not intruding. You don't want to change the behavior of people because you're in the room. So you kind of want to be a fly in the wall to see how people would normally react without them really noticing that you're there, even though they may know that you're there. So you don't want to interfere and interact, and you'll just kind of be that fly on the wall when you're doing observations. So the goal is to be familiar with what you're studying and to observe the interaction without influencing it. Now, an example is you're observing workers. Now, if they know that you're in front of them, like, okay, I'll give you an example. Like, I give you 5 minutes to do homework or classwork, and I'm walking around the room. I'm right there. If I start standing right in front of you, all of a sudden your productivity is going to go up because you're like, oh, the professor's standing right over my head. And if I move back and maybe I go and I talk to another student, then you might work a little slower. So that's exactly what you don't want to do in this case. You don't want people to change their behavior because you're right there. Now, interviews, so that's observation. Interviews, and normally a lot of times after an observation, you might interview someone. And you'll also have your field notes, and researchers will take notes. They'll interview people. And you usually would want to record, and it says tape recorder, but of course, if you're on Zoom, you can do a Zoom recorder. Zoom, you can record the session. There's lots of ways with technology now that makes it pretty easy to record. But in general, you often would want to record so you don't have to memorize everything and rely on your notes, which might be not as accurate as if you can record the session. So guidelines to taking notes. Are there specific things that you would like to learn about? So that's what are you trying to find out? Who are the people present? Who are you observing? You don't have to put their names in, you can put pseudonyms. What were the main issues or themes that struck you in the setting? Were there specific issues that you might want to explore further? So you'll take notes and just to get the general idea of and the important things that stand out to you. Now, in ethnography, where you're going to have a homework assignment to do an ethnography. I'll talk about that more separately. But an ethnography is really where you want to learn about someone or a group of people, and you want to put yourself in that situation. And some of you may have learned about ethnography in a different course, but basically, you want to observe people in a natural setting, and maybe it's a specific culture that you're looking at, and you want to see why a group does what it does. So you kind of want to live it. You want to take part in the life of people. You want to take place in a natural setting of the subject. So you kind of go to their subject, to them. You don't bring them to you. You kind of go to them. and you observe them and participate with them. So you're doing what they're doing. What are the advantages of doing an ethnography? You're really getting a detailed view of the situation, and it's a natural setting, and you're seeing the lives of people. It's good to study for studying a topic that's very complicated, and to really fully embed yourself in the social system that you may not have understood otherwise. So it's a study that will tell you what you can later study quantitatively in the lab, or what to build. It's basically an early way to do an observation, and it's a different kind of observation where you're really immersing yourselves in what you're studying. A disadvantage of ethnography, it's a lot to ask for a researcher to do this. It's not so simple. It's not as well established as surveys, experiments. It's hard to reproduce findings to other areas. So there's some disadvantages as well. But I'm going to have you do one for homework assignments. I think it's going to help prepare you for need finding when we talk about need finding. So how do you do it? Pretty much it's going to be observation. You'll immerse yourself and go to an environment that you've never gone before, um, and and you'll observe. And perhaps if you want, you can include some open-ended questions at the end. That's optional, and and that's up to you.